thank everyone for tuning in to the 25th Hour Radio Show. I am your host, Rob Fairless, and on the phone with me today is multi-platinum selling hip-hop artist Daniel O'Connor. You might know him best as Danny Boy from the groups House of Pain and La Coka Nostra. What's cool is Daniel also owns the Outsiders House Museum in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's the actual house used in the 1983 Francis Ford Coppola film, The Outsiders, which was originally a book written by author S.E. Hinton. Daniel, thanks for taking time out on your Saturday to join me on the show.
You got it, brother. I haven't been called Daniel since I got in trouble at maybe fourth grade from my mother. So, but good to meet you, and Danny works just fine.
All right, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
No worries.
So, man, I'd like to cover a little bit of everything concerning your career, your music, your business. So let's just start somewhere. What inspired you to get into the music game in the first place, and what was it about rap music that made you gravitate towards that genre?
No, good question. So I'm originally from New York. I'm a New York native. Spent the first 6 years of my life in New York. We moved to Southern California when I was 6. And then a few years later, my mother used to send me back to the East Coast until I was about 16 every summer. So I feel like I grew up on both coasts. My mother had a wonderful collection of records, mostly being R&B and soul, a lot of Motown, and some disco. And if I'm 52 years old, so when I'm going back, 40 years or so, in the 70s or early 80s, if you were a white kid in a suburban neighborhood and they called you Disco Dan, that could be fighting words. And that really was my thing. I like to roller skate. I love R&B and disco. And then the logical progression was that hip hop kind of is formed in that and comes out of that world, if you will. And I'm still like, as a kid, I'm still loving that I'm a New Yorker, even though I'm living in LA. I identified to being an East Coast kid rather than a West Coast kid. So it was really easy for me to fall into it. The fashion, the graffiti, the new sound, the way they just the dance that came out of that, break dance and popping, it was just all, electrifying, if you were. And everything else seemed stagnant and stagnant. So I just knew when I heard hip hop that was for me. So never in a million years, though, that I think I would end up forming a group and going, to the next level with that. But yeah, I just was always a kid that loved, I love a backbeat. I love that bounce, so.
Yeah, cool, man. Now, I don't want to dig too much into the music side of things because we don't have a lot of time, and I mainly want to focus on your museum. But to kind of lead into that, it seems like you've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. From what I've read online, it seems like you've had your hands in a lot of different side businesses outside of your music, even before the museum. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, of course. I me's just me. I got a ninth grade education, but I'm a creative. I found my niche to be a creative. It's kind of, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, I don't have a formal education, so I knew I was never going to work for somebody else doing whatever they wanted to do. And I always had ambitions to do everything but that. And so I just kind of followed my heart and went down the entrepreneurial path. But it's definitely one of peaks and valleys. And you got to also there's a lot of downtime and disappointment, and it goes with that. And for every one thing that hits, for me personally, there's 100 other things that were equally as good as or as clever as that just don't work. And so for the few little things that I've got to line up at the right time and pop up, if you will, I'm not only grateful for them, I feel blessed. But yes, definitely been an entrepreneur all my life. And again, all of the things that I ended up doing, I never thought in a million years I'd be doing. So I never thought I'd be, we started messing around with records. I never thought we'd still be talking about House of Pain, almost 40 years after it was 30 years actually after it. And the way I find the Outsider's house is because I'm on tour and we're passing through Tulsa and we have 3 days off. And it occurs to me that Tulsa rings a bell and that my favorite movie and the book that I love is all written here in Tulsa. And I go looking for those locations and finding the house. Now, if you would have told me, 10 years prior to that, I'd be owning that house. Or if you would have told the 13 or 14-year-old Danny Boy who saw The Outsiders at its theatrical release in Woodland Hills, California, that, 30 years down the line, you're going to own this house and you're going to turn it into a museum, I would have thought you were crazy. So you just never know, or I did never know where the road's going to take me. So I just keep doing one thing, the next indicated action. And here we are.
So did you buy the house with the idea to turn it into the museum, or did you just
No. Absolutely not. So I came to Tulsa, Oklahoma in 2009 on tour with La Coka Nostra. Like I said, it occurred to me that my favorite movie and book was from here. I went looking for locations, found the locations. I found the drive-in from the movie, the park from the movie, and the house. I put all three of those on social media, and everybody was losing their mind. They couldn't believe it was still looked like it did, which was the way it looked in the movie, and couldn't believe it was still on Earth. At that time, the house was for sale for $42,000, and coming from Beverly Hills, that's really affordable. But I knew better than to just dive in head first. So for the next 5 years, I kept an eye on the house, and every time I'd pass through the Midwest, I'd always make a beeline for Tulsa. And so for 5 years in a row, I ended up coming once or twice to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I would check in on the house. By year 5, I realized that the house wasn't going to make it. They were tearing all the homes in this area down and building new homes. And I thought, if somebody doesn't step up and save this, it's gonna get torn down. And that's kind of how I just jumped into it head first. At that point, no, my original plan was to board it up and figure it out later. I just couldn't imagine the planet Earth without having that house saved. But I had no real plan and no real money. And I wanted, if you'd allow me 1 second to just touch on that. I talk to kids a lot, about what I've done. And I'm that weird, anomaly of like, it's always good to have a plan and a budget. But for most of my life, I had no plan and no budget. And I don't know that's the preferred way to go about it, but there is something to be said about someone who just kind of, follows your intuition and your heart and comes from a place of passion. I don't know that you'll get rich doing that, but I have a rich life doing this, if that makes sense to anybody. So I always tell kids, like, there are other ways to get the job done. And really, that's how I've been doing it my whole life.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, it was like the community of Tulsa kind of came out of the woodwork to help you restore this home.
Absolutely. I attribute all of my success to the relationship that I have with Tulsa and Tulsa's relationship to me. I don't know that this house would have got done on either coast, but the heart, they call the heartland the Midwest and this, the flyover country for a reason. And I found nothing but other fans of the book, the movie, other fans of even House of Pain and the Coka Nostra, and just people who are fans of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and wanted to see a good thing happen. So I came here. I put $20,000 of my money into the house. I had $8,000 left to my name at the time. We were not working at the time. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And I reached out for help, and I put a GoFundMe together. And slowly but surely, the community reacted. And the author is the number one contributor to the museum. Jack White, the musician, contributed a nice, significant chunk. Billy Idol gave me a little money. And really, it gets built from like everyday people that are just in the neighborhood or from Oklahoma or fans of the movie who chip in a little here, a little there, cut the lawn, fix the roof, build a fence, stuff like that. So it's been life-changing for me to see that spirit of Americans, doing what we do, to see that real time, it restored my faith in humanity, to say the least. So
that's pretty cool, man. How long did it take to fully restore the home?
About 3.5 years. When they first asked me, how long do you think it'll take? Oh, give me 6 months. I had no idea what I was talking about. I bought that house with one poster, and the house was definitely in tear down condition. I mean, all that house needed was a new house. So we really had to start from scratch and remove everything and then build it all back up from scratch using just the shell of the house and the exterior of the house. Everything else had to be redone, and then we had to make it look like movie magic. We had a set build, if you will, to make every room look like it did in the movie. So
what can a fan of The Outsiders book and movie expect if they decide to come check out the house, man? What would you consider to be some of the highlights?
Yeah, I mean, it's literally like just stepping back in a time to 1967. When you walk into that house, you feel like you walked on a set of Francis Ford Coppola's classic in '82 when they were filming. Every room that was seen in the movie, which is 1, 2, 4 rooms, have all been restored to the exact specifications. There are photo cues in each and every room that you could recreate a scene in those rooms. And when I bought the house, I had one poster to my name, and we now have the largest collection of Outsiders movie memorabilia and books known to man. And it keeps growing. We have a gift shop out back that also has more of the movie memorabilia, and then we also have a beautiful gift shop with all types of Outsiders and Greaser stuff that you can buy. And yeah, I mean, so far so good. My number one goal was to make sure that like really deep cut fans who really know this movie and this book well, which are usually seventh and eighth graders, were going to come here, and it would exceed expectations. And so far so good. And I mean that, you know, that was important to me, that people felt like this was an authentic experience. And I think we've hit the mark, and that's why it took so long to do what we did.
Now, you've had a lot of the original cast members stop by to sort of reminisce, right? What's some of their reactions to what you've done here?
They love it. I mean, it's ironic because today at 1 o'clock the gates open at the museum, and at 2 o'clock Tommy Howell, aka C. Thomas Howell, aka Ponyboy, is performing. We're doing a lawn concert. He has a band that he put together, and he's written some original songs. And I think he does a few classics as well. And then he waxes poetic about his movie career and as it pertains to The Outsiders. And it's 2 days, a sold out event, VIP tickets, meet and greets, and the whole ball of wax. So he's done 2 shows. He's doing 2 shows at night at the venue Shrine. He did one here at the Mayo Hotel where we live, and now he's doing 2 days on the lawn. So he's got, I think, five shows and about 10 different engagements that he's doing coming through Tulsa. So Tulsa loves The Outsiders. Tulsa loves S.E. Hinton, and all of the actors who have come through have definitely felt that love. So far, we've had Ralph Macchio a few times, C. Thomas Howell a few times. Rob Lowe had stopped by, the executive producer to Coppola. Fred Roos, who was also the casting agent, has come through. S.E. Hinton numerous times, and a ton of extras and production people who are still here living in Tulsa. We have a wall of fame in the Outsiders house that has been signed by everybody who had something to do with this production, and we're running out of wall space, so I got to figure out a new place to get this going. But yeah, it's been nothing short of miraculous, and it's changed my life for the better. I was at the point, even when I found this house in 2009, wasn't sure on how far I could keep stretching out my hip hop career, and I was always looking for something a little bit more down to earth and grounded. And again, I wouldn't have believed you if you would have told me in 2009 I'd be here now. And it's the best thing that ever happened to me. It exceeds all other things that I've done. Have been fantastic, and I've enjoyed the ride. It's been a bumpy ride, but so far with this house and the museum and the nature of it all has been very smooth, very calm and smooth sailing for me. So I cherish it.
Cool, man. Now, is the museum your main focus now, or will you be going back out on the road?
No, I mean, perhaps once in a while we'll ride the gravy train, but I don't. You know, you get to a point. Hip hop's a funny thing. It's very different from a lot of other music forms, and it's got a shelf life. It's got a longer shelf life than it does like it's like a young man's sport, and the game changes every decade, if not sooner. And, you get to a certain point where, of course, there'll always be House of Pain and the Coka Nostra fans out there. But it just, the mindset that we were doing those, or that I was involved in those records with, a 20-something-year-old mindset is different from a 52-year-old. And I've grown a lot since then. So I don't mind, like I said, if the opportunity arises to do some shows or stuff like that. But I'm pretty much done with that part of my life, and it feels good to actually, it's a nice chapter, but I definitely have other things that I want to do. So
yeah, man, it's a good transition, man. I think.
Yeah, for sure.
So where can people go as far as social media and website?
Yeah, theoutsidershouse.com or the Outsiders House Museum on all socials. You'll see all of the photos of the tours, the photos of the house, the people that stop by. I mean, it's a real beacon of light in Tulsa. I mean, anybody who passes through, whether they're playing the BOK Center or Kane's Ballroom or just happening to pass them through, we get so many guests. It's ridiculous. I've had from Kool Keith to Tito Jackson to Jack White to last week Green Day came through, Leonardo DiCaprio the week before. We've had all kinds of actors from, just it had a really wide audience, and it's incredible to see how many people that the author S.C. Hinton has touched with her work, and also with Coppola and that cast. They mean so much to the people, and it's kind of like a rite of passage. They come through, they take a photo on the porch, and then they're out. And yeah, it's been very cool. So it's a full-time gig for me. I work on it around the clock, and we're hoping to just, as the COVID thing is starting to, figure itself out. We're trying to figure out more ways to stay open. Right now, we're only open on the weekends. We just added a Friday, so we're open 3 days a week, 11 to 4 p.m. But we're hoping to open from Wednesday till Sunday moving forward, and then eventually it'd be ideal to be open at least 6 days a week. But right now we're not. So.
Well, cool, man. Well, Daniel, we're about out. Or Daniel,
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
Caught myself again, man.
I feel like I did something bad.
Well, man, we're about out of time, man. Is there anything you'd like to mention to my listening audience that I failed to bring up, or any words of wisdom?
No, everything. Listen, I made it this far by following my heart, man, and it's worth the bumpy ride if you're passionate about what you do, and you have a zeal to get it done. And my suggestion is keep pushing and move forward. So.
Well, Danny boy, it's been really cool talking with you, and I want to wish you the best of luck moving forward with the museum and your music. Thanks for doing this.
Come and visit anytime.